Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining me again. I feel like it's been so long since I've done a video, even though it realistically I think has only been like 2, maybe 3 weeks. But I think the reason it's felt that way is because my current reading project is kind of a bit of an undertaking, and I am almost at the end. I wanted to kind of go through at a bit of a steadier pace when I was making this video. So like I'm reading a series, so read book number 2 and then do 2 or 3 minute explanation, then move on to book 3. I have not done that at all. I keep putting it off because I am now on book, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm now on book 6 of the series, and I have not talked about it at all. So today we are going to discuss part of the Red Rising series. Now, I only have 3 of the books physically here. The first Red Rising book, I'll put a picture up somewhere, I read last year when I was working on a project. I was trying to get through a lot of kind of fantasy sci-fi series, working on solely the first book in that series. And I absolutely loved book 1 of Red Rising. It was one of my favorite books of the year, actually. I really wanted to continue with the series, so I figured I would kind of tackle that as my next project. So in the past few weeks, I have read Golden Sun, Morning Star, book number 3, which I do not physically own. I did listen to that as an audiobook, which is called Iron Gold. Is it called Iron Gold? I think it is. Iron Gold. And then what was the last one I just finished today? Dark Age. I do physically own that one, but it is in Michigan packed away, so I listened to that as an audiobook as well. And then tomorrow I will be starting Lightbringer, which is not the last book in the series. The last book in the series I think is coming out, it was supposed to be early this year, so I'm thinking soon, sometime soon. I think that's going to be the last book in the series. It's going to be book number 7, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah, 7. So where to begin with this series? There is a lot to unpack. There are so many characters, there are so many factions, there are so many beings. It is really violent and political, and it's about relationships and friendships and prejudice and so many things. I will say I have overall really enjoyed it. So I mentioned book 1, really liking it. I will go ahead and do just like a quick rerun. So, oh Lord, let's see if I can remember everything that happened in book 1. Main character's name is Darrow. If you want to skip this part and watch the video, I'll try to, I don't know how to attach a picture of it, but I'll try to do that. Anyway, Darrow is a red, and society is made into these different kind of color factions. So on the very bottom are reds, and on the very top are golds. And golds are kind of the gods of the universe. They're really tall and really strong and really beautiful, and they're superior physically and mentally, kind of in every way. There are a lot of other colors as well, and we meet more of those characters specifically in the second portion of the series, so book 4, 5, and 6. That's when it really gets interesting with the, we mainly focus on the reds and the golds in book 1, 2, and 3, but there are the obsidians who are really famed warriors. There are the pinks that are pretty much sexual slaves. There are the whites that I think they're like the religious groups. Are they? Yellows are the doctors. Greens, I believe, are the ones that focus more on technology and like running ships and stuff like that. The series takes place in our world, but in the future. Society has moved to other planets. Darrow is living supposedly on Mars, and he's a red. He's working the mines, and they are told by their kind of gold overlords that the work that you guys are doing is really important. You're preparing this planet so that, you know, people from Earth who are struggling to live can come to Mars and live here. Really important work. Only Darrow finds out that so much of it is a lie. His wife ends up being killed by the Golds because she is trying to stage a riot. She's rebelling. There's a bit of a fake death with Darrow, and he gets taken by this kind of secret underground society and transformed physically and mentally into a Gold. And they're doing this to put Darrow in a position where he's able to get behind enemy lines, he's able to gain people's trust, and then eventually work to kind of overthrow this government. Now, I did mention in the first book there were some issues where Darrow was a bit of a Mary Sue character in that everything came so easily and naturally to him. He was kind of superior effortlessly in every single way. Not everyone loved him because some people hated him, but he had such this kind of charismatic impact. It did feel very Mary Sue-like, but there were so many things that I enjoyed about the book that it didn't really bring it down all that much. I wasn't crazy about his wife immediately, what do they call it, fridging, I think. Io is the name of his wife, was immediately sacrificed to give him motivation. But as the story has gone on, Pierce Brown does give so many varied and powerful female characters that I feel like it wasn't done kind of willy-nilly on his part. Now, in book 1, Darrow goes to kind of like this institute where he's surrounded by other Golds, and it's where you go to train to become warriors and leaders and these really powerful families that rule all these worlds, and these millions of people are filthy rich. So Darrow is very much out of his comfort zone as he's making friends, he's making enemies, he's fighting, he's trying to become a tactician. It was really, really good. Lots of action. Pierce Brown writes action sequences very, very well. As the series goes on, there's lots of violence, lots of gore. I would say for the most part, it's very impactful. There's been, as I've read through 6 of the books now, there's been a lot of gore, violence. Again, most of it I think is used well. However, it is starting to become a little bit less impactful because everyone's getting tortured, everyone's getting their hands and fingers chopped off, and after the 10th time that happens, it starts to lose a little bit of its edge. However, I would say that is one of Pierce Brown's strengths, is putting you right in the middle of action sequences. Book 2, I would say, is probably my least favorite of them so far because it does get a lot more political. Darrow is trying to secure a place in one of these powerful houses to become, I think it's called a Lancer. People are betraying other people. We're getting new enemies, new friends. It does feel like in book 2 and 3, there are just too many characters and some of them are really similar. Now, book 4, 5, and 6, I think for the most part, this kind of ironed itself out. Maybe it's because we're given more time with these characters, so we are learning more about them and getting more invested in their stories. But I think it's also that in the first trilogy, so many of the characters die that it takes obviously some of the character list away. But some of the deaths were impactful. Some of them were just like, I can't remember who this character is or what they did, so I don't really care. Talking about the first series, one of the things, if I were to criticize, if I had to pick something to criticize, because there's so many good things to say about it, but there are definite cheesy moments and lines, and I've mentioned this before, I can't remember what book or series I was talking about, but I really respect and admire when, especially fantasy authors, go full run at trying to make that kind of emotional, serious, deep connection and impact. And a lot of times it is going to turn out cheesy, and that's just a risk that you have to take. But I appreciate that the chance has been taken to at least get to that point. There were parts where, granted, this is our world, so some of the people who quote other people, like other famous people, of course we're going to recognize them because this is set in our world. But Darrow at one point says, like, don't tell me the odds, or never tell me the odds. And it's just like these Star Wars references and other references where it's like one or two lines, famous lines that have been taken from something else, but it doesn't seem like the character is quoting that person. Like, I don't think Darrow was quoting Han Solo. So to me, that was just kind of strange. I wasn't crazy about that part. But again, it's such a small thing to complain about. It really didn't make all that big of a difference in the enjoyment of going through it. Book 1 out of the first series was definitely my favorite, I think, because it was way more contained. Book 4, 5, and 6, again, the scale does get bigger, but we're given different POVs into all these different characters, so it feels more contained. Whereas book 2 and 3, you're starting to deal with like millions of lives and dozens of worlds, and you start to lose sight just in the kind of enormity of those numbers. You lose the impact that deaths will have. Whereas if you're talking about like this town gets slaughtered, but 5 people in the town, well, that makes way more of an emotional impact on me than if you just said 1 million people on this world were destroyed, but then I don't know any of the people in the world. So I feel like scale in fantasy series, you want to go big, and I get that. So many times it's like the fate of the world is resting on the hero's shoulders. But that was one of the things where the bigger the scale got, the more it kind of lost in impact on me. The only other thing that I would like complain about is there's this one character what's his name? Severo, I think. Is it Severo? I think it's Severo. And it's just, so the tone of these books is overall very dark. And I think the author does try to provide some humor and some levity, mostly in the form of Severo. However, the humor he provides is just not one I'm fond of, which is pretty much 10-year-old boy humor. It's like gross out humor. I couldn't stand the character just because he was so physically gross all the time. I don't know. Guys would probably like him or appreciate his humor a lot more than me, and I'm sorry if I'm generalizing, but I feel like that's the case. As we get into the second series, and I apologize, I know I'm like jumping all over, but there's so much to talk about in these books that I feel like there's no like one clean through way. As you get into the second series, we are given different POVs, which I think really helps strengthen it, because at the end of book 3, we're pretty much only getting Darrow's POV, and I just was I needed a little bit of a break from Darrow. Darrow's got a lot of responsibility. Darrow's meant to be a warrior. He's kind of meant to, like, destined for violence in an odd way. And it's just, if that's all you're getting, I was getting a little tired of that one-sided example of a person, I guess. I think that was a great idea, especially as you're starting to talk about, like, there's so many new villains and new heroes, and they're on all these different worlds, and if you want any chance of keeping track of them, you're going to need more than one POV. And as I mentioned before, as well as the additional POVs, you're also given greater depth into the different colors, which I found really fascinating, because all these colors, it's not just like the physical differences, it's the mental and the emotional. Like the pinks that I mentioned before, they are bred purely for the pleasure of others. So we're given a few Pink characters where they've just been victimized their entire life, and some of them are now given a little taste of power, and understandably they're out wanting revenge. There are a few Obsidian characters, and they're these warriors, but they have a very particular sense of humor, and that they don't have much humor, and they take most things very literally. The books also do a really good job at portraying their villains, making a lot of them really complicated, giving them different backstories, giving them reasons for their actions. It's not like, oh, I'm just like the evil lord and I'm going to kill people just because I enjoy violence. Like, there are some characters that are sadists and just live in violence and gore, and that's what they enjoy. But there are a lot of other villains that are doing it for the glory of their houses, and this is how they've been raised. Or some are doing it to avenge others that, you know, this other faction has killed of theirs. And it's not the same cookie cutter villain you get each time, because they are kind of recycled. Not recycled, they die. Some of them get defeated, and then obviously you're going to get a new villain. But some of them are more physical, some of them are more political, some of them are more emotional. I think the author does a really good job of giving you different kind of flavors of villains and heroes as well. I've really enjoyed as well reading about the kind of clashes of the different colors coming together. In the beginning of the books, so many of the color factions were isolated within their own community. So like reds live with reds, golds ruled above everyone, but they only really socialized with each other. But as these bigger wars break out, you get these mix of colors and these collisions of different values and personalities that are really humorous a lot of times, and also just interesting to read about, like, certain sects of people who are raised certain ways meeting others that were raised completely opposite to them and seeing each other's reactions. I've really enjoyed that part of it. I definitely think these books would benefit from a second read. Again, mostly because there are so many characters, and I do have my favorites. I've got probably 8 or 9 characters that I like. You learn about their past and their personalities and their aspirations and their struggles. So he does a really good job of fleshing out so many of the characters, but there are so many that some of them have died, like I mentioned before, and I'm just like, I don't know who you are, I don't remember you. So if I read it a second time, I think I would start to get or become more connected to some of the more nuanced characters. But I do still have this one. I am very excited to get into this. I have droned on a lot, and I've jumped from topic to topic, which I knew that's how this video was gonna go. I apologize. Anyway, I will be back once I have finished this one. I have finished Lightbringer. Oh my goodness, it was amazing. These books just keep getting better and better as the series goes on. Now, when I first started the series, well, I first started the series about a year ago. I just read the first book, but when I decided to continue reading the series, I looked online just to get an idea of the last book, because this is not the last book. There's one more. I think it's going to be called Red God. And I saw online, apparently I was looking at the wrong place, but I saw that it was spring or summer of this year that it was supposed to be released. I think I was looking at like an old forum. I just checked again as I finished this one, and they're saying possibly it's going to be next year, so 2026. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to stop the series for now. I really would like to continue and finish it because this is amazing. So many different feelings. Okay, I'm just gonna rant a little bit. In this one, there was much more of an emotional attachment that I felt to a lot of the characters. I think because The characters that are left now, most of them, you've had 5-6 books to get to know them. I think it also really helped that there's several different POVs. So you're not just getting things from Darrow's perspective. It focuses on a lot of the other colors, a lot of the other worlds, a lot of the other kind of political parties, your enemies. Pierce Brown, yes, that's the author. He does villains really well, and he specifically does villains, complicated gray villains really well, because he will make you hate a character and be like, I wish they were dead, and then he'll give you something from their perspective that shows how in their mind they're not the villain, they're the hero, and they're doing this because of family honor or to try and promote peace. Even though it's a crappy way to promote peace, they think their idea is best. There's one character So, my favorite character, I'm not going to name names because I don't want to spoil anything, but my favorite character is No More, and I'm really upset about it because this character deserved so much better. Such a good, complicated character who had such an interesting perception of honor, and even though this character did some really terrible things, was trying so hard, and the relationships were between this character, again, I'm not going to name names, and others were just beginning to come to fruition, and they were repairing relationships, and then this character gets torn away, and I'm so upset, and I don't think this character is coming back. Pierce Brown, how dare you do this to me? What a good series, and man, I'm so happy I continued, because like was it book 2 or 3? I was really thinking that book 1 was like the highlight. I'm like, this is gonna be again an Ember in the Ashes thing where I loved book 1 and then it just keeps getting worse, and by the end of the series I'm like, why did I keep reading past book 1? No, if you can get past the first series, most people love the first series, but for me it just 2 and 3 were If you can get through that, just keep reading so you can get to 5 and 6, because that was so amazing. And I'm so glad that the 2025 reading slump seems to have been broken. This gives me a lot of hope for my next few books. I'm gonna keep hope alive. Anyway, if you guys read this series and either hated it or enjoyed it, let me know. Thank you guys for joining me in this video. Thank you for letting me rant, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.